Awesome. Well, welcome everyone to the July 7th, 2020 Ogden City Council meeting. Let the record reflect that all council members are present. Tonight I need to read the determination regarding our electronic meeting. So bear with me while I read this statement. This is July 2nd, 2020, I guess that's when it was written, I'm sorry. Council Chair determination to hold electronic meetings without anchor location. I, Angela Chaburka, Chair of the Ogden City Council, hereby make the determination pursuant to Utah Code 2074 that holding a public meeting with an anchor location, location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present due to the infectious nature and potentially dangerous health effects of contracting the COVID-19 virus. This determination runs through July 31st, 2020. All public council meetings, including work sessions, will be held electronically through July 31st, 2020. The situation will be reevaluated at that time to determine whether the risk of meeting with an anchor location has subsided. Information on how to connect to the public meetings will be posted on each agenda. The public may comment during the electronic meeting during public hearings or provide public input or on items designated for input on the agenda. General public comments will also be taken during the regular meetings. Written public comments may be submitted through the following electronic options. Telephonic message 801-629-8158. Public comment submission form at ogdencity.com/public input. Or email at citycouncil@ogdencity.com. And that was signed by me. Sorry about the cat interruption.
It made the meeting, quite frankly.
Well, honestly, it's like maybe there's more dangers at home than there is going out of my bedroom. I don't know. Anyway, thank you for that. Oh boy. So now we're going to invite Councilmember Heyer to recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and right after that, we'll have our moment of silence.
Okay, so I think we decided that if everyone muted their audio, then they would just hear me, right?
Correct.
Okay, I'll rise and repeat the pledge with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Heyer. Now we'll have a moment of silence. Thank you for that. Okay, so now we have on the common consent some revised interim rules, norms, and procedures for electronic meetings. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do you want a motion for this first?
You probably want a motion.
Oh, okay, let's have a motion. Why not?
Chair, I would make a motion that we adopt the common consent agenda as it's posted.
Second.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, a second by Vice Chair Blair. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes. Thank you. So now this evening, we're going to start with a series of public hearings. And my understanding is we'll have presentations on all three items with different presenters as they come forward. And then we'll have an opportunity for public hearings on each items individually and council deliberation and then the consideration of the ordinance. So first up, I believe we have Lisa Stout, the comptroller.
Thank you, Chair Chaburka. It's a pleasure to be here. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, let me share my screen with you. We've had a work session to discuss the fee increases proposed. Okay, is that showing the big presentation?
It is, thank you.
Okay. I'm going to briefly recap the fee changes that are proposed for fiscal year 21 and the ordinances before you tonight. The first change relates to a burn permit fee. The proposal is to increase it by $5 from $5 to $10. The impact to the general fund budget is fairly immaterial. We don't issue a lot of these annually. Chief Matthew, I believe, is here if you have any additional questions regarding the burn permit fees. The next fee increase proposed is from planning. They are proposing to increase several different fees that range between $50 and $175. They are also proposing eliminating two fees, a non-conforming use permit and a for expediting for 2 to 4 days and for 5 to 10 days. And I believe Greg Montgomery is here if you have any questions about these fee changes. We are not proposing a change to the budget for these fee increases. We are proposing that they will be absorbed in the budget that you have already adopted for fiscal year 21. And then the final fee ordinance before you tonight relates to airport land lease rates. There are several changes to the land lease rates that would impact the airport budget. The estimated impact of these changes is approximately $300,000 per year. And if these fees are adopted, we would adjust the budget as needed in the airport fund. Any questions regarding the fee ordinances before you this evening?
Hey, Lisa, this is Marcia. I have a quick question. When was the last time that we did increases to the fire or planning review fees?
I would have to do some research on that. I'm not sure. I know the fire burn permit fee has been $5 for a number of years, and I would have to look into the planning fee changes.
Lisa, this is Greg. I could explain.
Oh,
the
wonderful.
Planning fee. The last increase we did on planning fees was back in 2012. And this fee proposal change is just to cover the cost of the new mailings and the noticing. The postage is higher for these mailings, as well as the additional things we've put in to the mailings with the summary sheet and that. So this is to cover those notices. So it's only those items that we send out notices to that have the increase.
Thanks. It's been a while, it sounds like.
I was going to do a little tease and ask Doug if he remembers, but. Any other questions or? I don't see any other questions. I appreciate your presentation, Lisa.
Thank you.
So now I think we'll open with the public hearing for the, this one is for the planning division, around the planning division changes. So if anybody has public comment, would that be you, Brandon, explaining it, or Eric?
Either way, I'll do it for now since Eric is monitoring the results and other things. Yeah, if you are joining us via Zoom this evening, you can participate in this public hearing by raising your hand. There's a button to do so towards the bottom of your screen, and that will line up a queue for us here, and then each participant will have 3 minutes to address the council on each topic. And if you are joining us via telephone, you can also raise your hand by pressing *9. So with that, we'll wait for any raised hands to address the council in this public hearing.
Yeah, and just to reiterate that this public hearing would be about the planning division fees. We will next do the fire department and then the airport. So right now it's just about the planning division. I'm not seeing any hands, but I'd like to wait just a moment longer, just in case.
Chair, not seeing any hands raised. I would make a motion that we close the public hearing for this item.
Second.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, a second by Councilmember Nadolski to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, thank you. So now we have time if anybody would like to discuss this item further before we consider a motion. Is there any other questions or deliberation? I'm doing my best to mind read. I'm not seeing anybody rushing to their computer. Looks like you're ready to think about doing a motion, Councilmember Heyer.
I would be happy to. Let me just get to that. I make a motion that we adopt ordinance 2020-21.
Second.
I second.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, a second by Councilmember White to adopt proposed ordinance 2020-21. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Heyer,
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez,
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski,
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair,
Aye.
Chair Traburka.
Aye, and that passes. Thank you, everyone. So next up, we have the fire department fee. So we'll have time for public hearing on this item alone. If you'd like to make comment, follow the same procedures as you might have done before. Raise your hand in the chat bar, or is it, I don't remember what the star is.
If you're joining us via telephone, it's *9.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any hands raised. I'm not sure if anybody would like to close the public hearing.
Chair, I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing on this item.
I second it.
And we have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, a second by Councilmember Stevens to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this item? I'd be happy to consider any motions.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2020-22.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Stevens and a second by Councilmember Heyer to adopt proposed ordinance 2020-22. This is also a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez,
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski,
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer,
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair,
Aye.
Chair Chaburka.
Aye, and that passes. Thank you all. Finally, we have the public hearing for the Ogden-Hinckley Airport fee changes. So we'll open up that item for public comment. If anybody would like to comment, raise your hand in the chat bar on the Zoom meeting or dial *9 if you're on the phone. I do see one, Brandon, if you'd like to invite them in.
Absolutely. Renee, you are the first to address the council. Please limit your time to 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Renee Felker. I'm current hangar owner out at the Ogden Airport. I have more than one hangar. These fees are excessive. The increase is excessive, and it's excessive in comparison to other airports in the area. And all we're doing is devaluing the Ogden Airport by doing this, chasing more people off, and possibly leading to less revenue in the long run as people get scared away from the airport. I also question the legality of it based on the leases that we've all signed in the past that has a very favorable language for the city in some obtuse way of saying the city at any time can change any of the items that are agreed to in the lease. The increase in fees 2 years ago, I think it was, I fully supported. I think it was reasonable. Catch up on the CPI as identified in the lease. But this one is not a CPI or anything. It's just a way of generating more revenue. And since we're all bound to the airport for our hangars that are sitting there, and we really just can't walk away from it without losing a lot of money, we're going to be forced into paying this fee. We're not the only users of the airport. We do contribute to the financial base of the airport. And like for me, I'm an Ogden resident, and I'm paying for services in my taxes already. So the excuse that, well, the Ogden residents have to pay this out of their general fund or their regular tax base, yeah, okay, I'm paying for it already. Now I'm going to be hit again. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Chair, I'm not seeing any more hands being raised, and therefore I would make the motion that we close the public hearing on this item.
Second.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Vice Chair Blair to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. So I'm sort of surprised that we don't have more public input in this forum. However, I know we got many, many emails and phone calls over the past week or so about this item. Is there any further deliberation?
Chair, I would like to make a comment or two.
Hey, Rich, Member Heyer, there's a couple of people that are on via phone, and I just want to make sure they were not wanting to do public hearing. And I apologize, I just looked at the participant list. I just want to make sure they did it. Again, Brandon, maybe you can explain how to do that. I know we've already closed it, but
we could deal with it if they still want to talk, I'm sure.
We can open up the public hearing again.
Brandon, could you repeat how you get on just really quickly? Because I see a hand raised on one of those. And so I apologize for looking at the participant list late. So
No, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah, it looks like we do have one more raised hand.
Well, Chair, in that event, then I would make a motion that we reopen the public hearing for this last item.
Great. A motion to reopen the public hearing, and that was seconded by?
I'll second it.
Councilmember White. Thank you. Sorry, I just think I didn't see who said it. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And so maybe I think Councilmember White was asking you, Brandon, to repeat how people might participate, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
In case there's somebody else too that didn't get a chance.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, if you're joining us via telephone, the way to raise your hand is to press *9. And if you are joining us via Zoom, there is that option to raise your hand. There's a button that you can click on or press at the bottom of the screen. So with that, caller with the last 3 digits of your number being 044, you have now been unmuted. Please state your name for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Hello, Council. My name is Scott Dixon. I'm a current hangar tenant at the airport, and just want to make sure that we all know that there's benefits for the community as a whole that benefit from the airport in transportation, in the medical field, shipping, and just recognizing that it's not just aircraft owners that utilize the airport, that every citizen essentially in some way, shape, or form benefits from an airport being here locally based, and whether they receive mail or transportation benefits or medical assistance through the use of the airport. Please keep that in mind as we talk about balancing a budget and what would typically be supplied with our tax dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for your patience with our electronic meeting. Any other comments?
I guess I'll make that motion to close the public hearing again.
Second.
The motion to close the public hearing by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Vice Chair Blair. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, and thanks for noticing that, Councilmember White. Any further deliberation on this item?
Yeah, Chair, I have spent a little bit of time, that's an understatement, talking with folks, and I listened in on the entire Airport Advisory Committee meeting to listen to all of the public input that was there. Talked to many of you, talked with our CED and legal department, our airport manager since the Airport Advisory Committee meeting, and kind of felt like that perhaps we could modify our ordinance to a degree to make this a little more gentle and still get the city to where we need to be eventually. And also perhaps even, the master plan that we have approved has some pretty good things in there, and give us some time to implement some of those items so that other revenues can be generated at the airport, and perhaps we wouldn't need to raise those fees in the end of everything. And so legal has kindly kind of changed that structure so that I can see what that looks like. And rather than to go from 30 to 50 cents a foot, gone to about 50% of the increase, and delayed it to January 1st this year, and then another 5 cents a foot the next two January 1st. So it would come in much more gradually, and maybe not get to the final at all. So I'm not sure if there's anybody that can explain that ordinance a little bit better than I, but that's the one I would propose that we look to approve. And perhaps Tom, I don't know, whoever could maybe explain what that looks like a little better than I.
Brian, are you there? Do you want to take a shot?
Yeah, what the councilman's suggesting is that we take 3 years, January 1st, 2021, January 1st, 2022, and then the final January 1st, 2023. And we increment what's been proposed to happen all at once. We put 50% of that to begin this January. The following January, we would pick up 25% more. And then the following January of 2023, we would get to the level that the proposal is proposing that we go to immediately now. We would do that over 3 years. I hope that was pretty clear. I can restate that in cost per square foot. Essentially, we're at 30 cents. We would go to 40 cents on January 1, 2021. We would then go to 45 cents the following January 1 of 2022. And then we would go to the 50 cents on January 1, 2023.
Now, my understanding is that we do have an amended ordinance for that. I think Amy Sue was, maybe you could chime in, Amy, and tell us about that.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. So legal was kind enough to pull together a draft, and I'd asked our communications staff to please share that here on the meeting and on the Facebook Live so people can have access to that. But I also have just a summary of that I can throw up quickly on the screen just to also provide access to that. Let me very quickly. Okay.
I just wanted to mention also that it looks like if you're on the Zoom meeting, it is in the chat right now, a link to that ordinance as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Chaburka. And so to the point that was made by our airport manager and the description by Councilmember Heyer and the request that he had to maybe look at, and this is again a revision of what was proposed. So this isn't a whole new ordinance, it's just a revision to do that 3-year time period to get to that point. And then also there is a recommendation to remove the raw land lease rate that was proposed and to just fold that in with the others. So that before you kind of summarizes what is being proposed. And then as per current ordinance, that would include regular CPI index increases as well. I don't know if there's any questions council members have of this. I know it's kind of new to the discussion for sure, but just something that Councilmember Heyer and the legal team worked on together to have an alternate option for you all.
I guess the only thing I would say is I think, we have the public hearing format. I think I'd feel most comfortable leaving this out to the public to provide further comment to before I make a decision tonight, but I'm sure there's other questions about it as well.
I kind of felt this was responsive to the comments that we had received. It did seem a little bit more gentle or maybe heartless to do this right smack in the middle of the COVID crisis. So this delays that a little bit. and also ramps in the fee changes over that 3-year period rather than taking them all at once. I just felt this was a little more kind and responsive to the input that we received.
Chair Booker, can I comment as well?
Please.
Thanks. I appreciate the work that Councilmember Heyer's done on this proposal and alternative. The feedback we did receive, obviously the constituents out there in the airport would love to see an increase, but it did seem, we all know that in some regards this is kind of a long time coming, but at the same time it's some expectations have been in place for a long time. I felt it was unfair to make it an increase all at once as well. So I do appreciate Heyer's willingness to negotiate this process. I would maybe Chair Chaburka, in response to your comment about hearing from the public about this item or this alternative, would it be out of bounds or preferable that we open the public hearing again, and so that those that are here to listen to this item could potentially speak again to this specific amendment?
And I guess just quickly to jump in before we get to that. Sorry, Councilmember Nadolski. I don't know if there would be interest and a desire to put the ordinance up on the screen to let those see the actual ordinance and then maybe speak to that a little bit, if that would be helpful or not.
Are you able to do that? Put the ordinance up and then also take public comment again? Does that work?
I just didn't know if it might be helpful just to talk through the red line with the public. And I think the other summarizes it, but just to make sure there was a clear understanding.
Sure, thank you. If you'd like to do that.
Can I ask a question before we look back into that? And it has more to do with procedural. From a standpoint of, I'm going to botch this, but so this is a 3-year process of increases or fee increases. Are we tying the hands of future councils to have to do these increases?
Yeah, can I reply to that? I that was one of the concerns that came up in my discussions with all y'all. My mama was from Texas, so and that was, we aren't actually binding that money to be spent. We're just it's just trying to make sure that we make the airport whole in this process. So I think in my mind, no, we're not binding future councils, because they could undo what we did and have no financial consequences other than the money's going to have to come from somewhere else. So,
if I might, I was just going to say, yes, it would take, you would have to adopt another, if you adopted this ordinance, the amended ordinance tonight, it would take another ordinance amendment to make the change. So for the next 3 years, those increases would be in place automatically.
I'd add to that too that we do make other decisions on other contractual and funding obligations that are multi-year in the CED realm, where we have multi-year incentivizations, or incentive packages, and so on. So, as much as we may or may not tie the hands of future councils, it's not something we haven't done before in other ways.
I guess to clarify my point is that we aren't spending the money now and expecting a future council to pay for it. This is something that's the ordinance would happen, as Janine said, but it's not unprecedented at all.
That makes sense. I have one other quick question. What is the annual CPI increase? Is that something that we have normally done in a fee increase?
Yes. So this is kind of similar to how the water rates are structured. And so it would be the same consumer price index increase that happens in water rates. And the intent behind that is to help lessen the need for additional increases. So if you have kind of that maintained throughout, it helps reduce those additional needs in the future. It helps keep it on track with inflation.
I guess now I have a comment that kind of is different than my original comment about sharing it with people. Because I guess as I'm thinking about all the different comments that we've gotten, and maybe I'm asking you, Councilmember Heyer, since you did all this work, which I really do appreciate. A lot of folks have sort of more ideological kind of differences in why these increases are happening or who should really be charged. So I guess I wonder, some people that have commented to us would respond to any increase like this, even if it's over 3 years, that it's not appropriate for a variety of different reasons. We've heard them all. So did you get a sense from some of those folks if this would help to alleviate some of their concerns in any way? Or is this, like you said, I'm totally in agreement with making it a kind of gradual increase, because we know that that's what we need to do to make the airport solvent. But at the same time, I feel there are some people that have really strong feelings about why no increase or this amount of increase over even time would not be appropriate.
That was a lot of questions. Sounded like.
Well, I guess I'll just say the one question is how is this answering some of the people that just don't even agree with the increase at all?
Well, I don't know that this does. I mean, it certainly won't satisfy them. I asked Mr. Garrett, what areas could we look at to get revenue from? I says, could we raise the parking fee? He said, yeah, we sure could, but it would be absolutely minuscule compared to the contribution from the general fund. It just wouldn't make a significant difference at all. So those kind of things that, I kind of drilled him on some of those things that came up with the Airport Advisory Committee. It's by far, this is by far the area that supports the airport. It just is. And we're hoping to fertilize and cultivate some future areas. And that's kind of what I think this does, is gives some time for some of those things to take place, so that perhaps near the end of this process, we may find we don't need to continue with it. That was the thinking.
Yeah, I didn't put so many questions at you.
Yeah.
So would we like to look more closely at the ordinance that is proposed?
Chair, if I could add another comment, I would add to what Rich just said. I think it's also it gives us an opportunity to evaluate those other ways that we may achieve some other revenues, but also it would give those current users and tenants an opportunity to plan for the future as well. Hitting them cold with a big change in a fee that would have a big, based on a lot of the comments that we got, would have a big impact to their bottom line. And I think that's a difficult pill to swallow for anybody at any time in a business environment, but especially if it's hit all at once, and especially if it's hit during this difficult economic time. But one other thing I might mention too is it seems we might be wondering what the public is and the users would think of this approach. So a couple options are to reopen the public hearing, or we could also consider tabling this item so that the public has an opportunity to digest what we've discussed as well.
To comment what Ben says, I think that has some really interesting aspects of it, is that if we brought the ordinance and the fees back next week, at least we would have an opportunity for those at the airport and even the advisory, maybe Mike Nichols, to review it, since this is a new concept. And that way we could get public feedback from them. I don't know if any of the comments were changed, but at least it gives them the opportunity to voice their opinion. I support what Rich has mentioned here. I think it's the right thing to do to start in 2021 in January 1 and then amortize it for the next year, 2 years after that. So, but I support what Ben has suggested, that we maybe bring it back next week and take a look at it.
We do have some of those that have put in written concerns. Certainly not all of them, but we still have Mike Nichols on this call. I can't remember the name on the telephone call that came in. So there are still some people that of course, that would violate our rules, I guess, having them speak twice. But so maybe the best thing is to table this till next week and ask those concerned parties to email us and speak to it next week when we deliberate again.
Councilmember Heyer, I don't anticipate constituents are gonna love it. It is still a fee increase after all.
That's my sense too.
Yeah, but I also think that if they hate this approach just as much as they hate the initial proposal, that's important information for us to consider too, because whether it's a yay or a nay from all the council members on the original approach or the alternative, we all have a role to play here as a council on the financial well-being of the city. And so I would be interested in finding out if users out there dislike this alternative equally. And if that's the case, then maybe we need to reconsider, maybe you do need to consider revenues in a more abrupt fashion, or not at all, I guess. So I think additional public info and some time for them to digest would be helpful for me in my decision.
Yeah. Do we want to, I guess, just to clarify, I wouldn't mind going through the ordinance a little bit here, because even if we table this, I guess we could have it in another work session. I mean, I just think it's fair for us to have it in front of us, maybe presented like the original proposal was in some way. I'm happy to do that, however, is the best way to do it, whether it's here or at a work session later.
We could do it both. We could do both. But if we did it later, we could also advertise it for public comment with in the public announcement.
So, Amy, would you mind going through the red line?
No, not at all. That's no problem at all. Let me share that on the screen. And it's sort of red line. It's black and white line.
Okay, you know what I mean.
I'm happy to highlight and discuss. Let me quickly. Here we go. Can everyone see that okay?
So, Amy, this is the amended ordinance, right, that we're looking at?
Yes, correct. And just to clarify a little bit on that, so with the amended ordinance, this is an amendment of what was proposed. And so the current ordinance, I mean, it still shows what the amendment is between the two, but it also kind of indicates the changes between those two. So you'll look at this and it has this incremental increase as we discussed, and it also includes those dates. So the previous ordinance did not include those dates with the beginning January 1st, 2021, 2022, 2023. So those are all new. And then with that, again, as Bryant described it really well, the first one is a 50% increase for that first year, and then 25%, and then a 25% to get to that full increase that was proposed. But then it would be over that incremental 3-year period. And so with that, the non-aeronautical activities, so the proposal to change those remains intact. And that one, you all may recall, there's a maximum that can be charged, and then the minimum would be fair market value. And then there would be some discretion of the airport manager to determine those rates. Okay, let me see if it'll let me. There we go. Go to the next page. And so then the other thing that it does pull out, as I discussed previously, that's in the other proposal is the raw land rate specific to those would be pulled out, and then everything will be folded into kind of these four different non-aeronautical and the aeronautical activities. And the aeronautical activities are where the main increases are taking place that are specific. The non-aeronautical, there is definitely an increase there, and the ordinance prescribes that that's 4 times the rate up here for the unimproved and improved land, So ultimately, the main shift with what was proposed and presented to the Airport Advisory Committee and the airport community is that 3-tier rate increase. And then also this does include the CPI adjustment that was not previously included in the proposed ordinance, but is in our current ordinance. So I don't know if there's any questions on that and what's included. And Gary, if you'd like to chime in, you're more than welcome to as well.
Thanks, Amy. I guess I wouldn't mind asking Bryant, like, how does this impact your plan that you had in place?
Well, as a general rule, the full amount is what's needed to put the operating account from red ink to black. So it will just take 3 years to do it. But if that is the desire, it'll get us where we need to be. And it would give me 3 years to raise revenue in other areas. In particular, some of the things that we're hoping happen on the west side of the field. And we also have, as Councilman Heyer alluded to, there were some lesser fees that also could be increased to just show that we're sharing it around. All of that can come about in that 3-year time period. And again, once we get to break even, we don't need to put that burden specifically on the price per square foot.
Any other questions?
Chair, let me just think out loud a little bit. As I spoke with many of you, I think that this was because of the needs that have been at the airport for so long. It was likely going to pass as it was proposed. So rather than to prolong the pain, I think we ought to try this motion with the council right now and see what happens. I think this is certainly better than, for everybody that has already reached out to the council than what was originally proposed. I can't think we're gonna, it's not gonna be worse. Certainly, I think we ought to give it a try today.
Well, you're certainly welcome to make any motions you might like.
Okay, I'll try that then. Chair, I would move that we amend the proposed ordinance 2020-23 as set forth in the text amendment that has been circulated to council members, which includes the following modifications: phasing the proposed aeronautical improvement and unimproved land lease increases incrementally over 3 years, with an increase of 10 cents per square foot for the first year and 5-cent increase per square foot for the following 2 years, outlining that each phased increase will occur January 2021, January 2022, and January 2023, providing for inclusion of consumer price index increases already included in ordinance, and removing the proposed raw land lease designation as associated language.
I'm not going to repeat all of that.
I wouldn't bother.
I second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Councilmember Lopez. for the amendment of proposed ordinance 2020-23. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Nadolski,
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens,
No.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer,
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair,
Aye.
Chair Chaburka.
Aye, and that passes. Thank you all. Thanks for all of that work, Councilmember Heyer.
Can I make another motion?
Please.
Okay, I would move that we adopt the ordinance 2023 as amended. The first motion was just to amend the ordinance.
I second. Second.
Before you get there, Chair, can I state why I voted no on that?
Absolutely, yeah.
I support what Rich is doing, and I support his program. I'm very interested in trying to move the airport to not to be subsidized and to get the revenues up. But I believe that if we would have brought it back next week, we could have heard from some of the others to have them look at the ordinance and say, and maybe give their suggestions. I'm sure a lot of them won't change, but it just gave an opportunity to the public to respond to that ordinance aspect of it. So that's generally why I voted no, is because I felt like if we brought it back next week, then we would have those comments from the public that may be worth looking at in the future.
Thank you, Councilmember Stevens.
Chair, before we get back to that underlying motion, can I add a comment as well?
Please.
I actually would have preferred that we brought it back to, like Councilmember Stevens. I supported it because I support the concept and I support the work that Councilmember Heyer has done and the negotiated middle ground I think that we've kind of landed on here. And I would have preferred to get more input from the community that's affected by it. But I ultimately decided to vote yes because I still think that we're going to hear from people one way or another on this after this meeting. And if there's considerable opposition or if we feel that we made some type of mistake, there's nothing keeping us from revisiting the decision that we made. So.
Yeah, and I would just say that I concur with you both in many ways. And I guess I talked myself out of it just because of thinking through the kinds of comments that we had. Most of the time it wasn't really about wasn't really about the amount. It was about whether the fees should be why we were doing it, I guess. I think most of the comments were about that. So I kind of talked myself out of the fact that it would make a difference if it was this ordinance or the other one. But yeah, I always like to make sure we get plenty of input about things. But I would have been one of those that would have voted for the first ordinance, not to be cruel during a virus, but because I know that the community is very, very interested in making sure that the airport is solvent on its own as soon as possible. So, were you going to make another motion, Councilmember Heyer?
I already did.
Oh, you
got a second.
Oh, yeah. And was it Councilmember Lopez again? Thank you, Janine. I appreciate your head nodding. Okay, so we have a motion by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Councilmember Lopez to adopt proposed ordinance 2020-23 with the amendment. Is that enough? Great. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski.
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair.
Aye.
Chair Chaburka.
Aye, and that passes. Anybody else like to make any other comments about that?
I just want to say I am sure that this is not going to make everybody happy. Maybe not very many. I don't know. But but it was my intention to be responsive to the comments that we received from the public, keeping in mind the problem is that we're trying to solve. And I thought this was a compromise that would lessen its impact and still get us where we need to be.
Thank you.
And I too would just like to thank Rich for the hard work. He put in a lot of time and a lot of effort to reach out to everyone and address all their concerns and to address the concerns going on at the airport. So I would like to thank Rich, not only for the legwork, but also for the reaching out and being the voice for this. So thanks, Councilman Heyer.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay, next up on our agenda is Greg Montgomery, our planning manager, to talk about 301 West 2nd Street, the local historic designation. Welcome, Greg. You're up. You're already on.
Let me unmute. There we go. So, as you mentioned, this is a recommendation coming from the Landmarks Commission regarding a request from the property owner, the Keoghs at 301 West 2nd Street. The proposal, too far, is a small portion of the stone farm. This is the stone home and some of the outbuildings that are associated with the home, but also has significance with the farm itself. So we are looking only at the home site, not the entire farm site. In the consideration, there is the home, which is a bungalow constructed in 1925, and 4 accessory structures. And these are the garage, chicken coop, tractor shed, and workshop. These properties are significant in the sense that they tell the story of farming in Weber County, more specifically within the boundaries of Ogden City. The home was built, as I said, as part of the farm. It had a variety of uses on the farm. It saw the time period of transition from horse to tractor in farming. And that bungalow built in the 20s gives a story of the type of architecture that occurred. And this is interesting because this is one of those outlying areas. Originally, as Ogden was settled, farming took place on the perimeter, and people lived within the city boundaries, which is basically south of the Ogden River. And the other areas outside were farmlands. As some of the forts were created for some establishments, Bingham Fort being one, which is out at 2nd and Wall Avenue in that general area. This farm was within those boundaries of that fort. And in fact, as they were digging the foundation, they came across some of the rubble left from a previous building when the fort existed, and used those as some of the cornerstones for this home. As the Landmarks Commission reviewed this, they reviewed it under 2 criteria: architectural significance, again, the bungalow style, the arts and crafts elements were also added into the gabled ends, and they still retain much of the original doors and windows. Even though there may be storm windows added in front, the windows are still taken care of and maintained. The Planning Commission also, the Landmarks Commission also, as they looked at it, again, as the historic significance of farming and its part in the community, and one of the last farm areas left within the city. So based on those 2 criteria, they're recommending 5-0 to place this property on the local historic register. Any questions you may have?
I have one, Greg. Did they talk about who's going to keep the upkeep of the grounds and also the building? It's well to have a historical site, but if no one takes care of it, then it becomes a problem for us as a community.
Well, each one of these are private properties, and the private property owner maintains them. The Keoghs live on this site. and so they maintain the site.
Okay.
Any other questions? And this item, is it also a public hearing? I'm trying to read the agenda correctly.
It's not a public hearing, but it would be appropriate to hear from the Keoghs or somebody else associated with this. They've done a lot of work down there too.
Chair Chaburka, if I could just interject, this is actually a public hearing.
As I was thinking, it was under public hearing on the agenda, so I'm just trying to make sure I'm doing it right.
Yep, and Councilmember Heyer is right. I believe Anna Keogh, the petitioner, is on the call as well.
I'm sorry for my error. It is under the public hearings. It looked like it was out, but sorry.
I know, I was trying to read my outline correctly, Rich, but sometimes I mess it up, so I just have to check.
Apparently I do too.
Right, Anna, we would love to hear from you if you would like to speak. I think you're now allowed to speak if you take yourself off mute. Guess I'm worried she's having trouble figuring out the mute button. So on my, there you go. Oh, now you're on mute again.
Oh, she made it for a second. There she is.
There you go.
Am I on?
Yes, now you're on.
Oh, okay. Well, I sent my comments actually in an email, just that we're excited to be a part of Ogden history. And I just want to correct one thing. It's the house and 3 structures, not 4, that would be on the register. The 4th structure is not eligible because it's been altered. Anyway, when I made that little video just to show the house in context with the farm and all of it in context with the neighborhood, because really all of it goes together to make a significant historic statement. And we're just excited to be a part of it. We feel like the public awareness and even the neighborhood awareness is increasing, and people are excited to be a part of preserving history. Any questions?
Chair, I have a question for Anna.
Please.
You've got quite the historic little area down there, Anna, and their names elude me. The ones that had their house put on the registry.
The Kriegers.
Kriegers, that's right. Are there others that we should expect coming to us soon, or?
Yes, there are other houses. One is in the process right now of updating her windows, and then there is another person who's considering it, and then there's the 2 houses which are for sale that we hope will find new buyers who want to preserve the house, and instead of bulldozing the houses and building condos. So yes, we're trying to get 5 houses on the register. And so, yes, there will be more nominations coming.
All right, thank you. That leads to another question for Greg, but I don't want to have anybody that wants to talk to Anna before that.
Any questions? Well, I really appreciate the video, Anna.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And question for Greg, Councilmember Heyer?
This is not a historic district, and I wondered what is required of an area to be made a historic district. Greg, is it a quantity of homes? Is it a square footage of homes or acreage rather? What is it that would lend us to look at this as a historic district rather than just individual homes?
The main thing would be looking of continuity of, does that time period being represented show through on all the buildings within that district area. A building here, a building there, and history of the area doesn't make the district. So much like Jefferson, you have homes that are all built in a time period and all have characteristics of architectural style, plus the historic story in a continuous street. Here, because of the various things that have taken place over time, buildings torn down, you don't have that context to create a district. You have the potential for individual site nominations.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks. Any other questions? Well, thank you all. So now we'll open the comments for public hearing on this particular item. Oh, someone have a comment? Sorry. We'll open this item for public comment. So if you're on the Zoom meeting, you can hit raise your hand in the chat button, or you can dial *9 on a telephone call if you'd like to raise your hand to speak.
Okay, Tammy Krieger, the floor is yours. You have 3 minutes. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, Tammy. You're unmuted if you'd like to speak. I hope you're not speaking and something else is muted. What do you think, Brandon? Is there any advice we can give her?
Tammy, you are unmuted, but I'm not seeing any indication of audio coming across. I don't know. There's not much that we can do on our end.
Yeah. I'm so sorry, Tammy, if you're trying to speak and technology is failing you. Maybe in the meanwhile, if anyone else would like to make comment, we could make that available and see if Tammy's able to figure it out.
Chair, one thing I am pretty sure of, she was the first one in that area to list her home on the historic registry. I'm pretty sure she's not against it. I think she's probably for this. So
I would guess the same thing. Well, we can consider closing the public hearing. I feel bad if she wanted to make a statement.
Chair, I'll make that motion that we close the public hearing on this item.
Second.
A motion to close the public hearing by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Vice Chair Blair. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I hope all the council members are still here with us. I only heard two voices, but I see you all. Okay.
More than I'm just struggling to keep all these boxes.
I know. That's okay. We're going to make it through. Okay. Would anybody like to propose a motion for this item?
Not as much as these are my peeps down there. I'm close to these guys. I appreciate them. I would like to make the motion that we adopt ordinance 2020-28, designating the stone farmhouse as a historic resource.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, a second by Councilmember Stevens to adopt proposed ordinance 2020-28. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair.
Anything for Rich's peeps. Aye.
Chair Chaburka.
Aye, and that passes. Thank you. Yeah, I certainly do appreciate this community's passion about their homes. I'm one of those too. Next up, we have Greg Montgomery, Planning Manager, who's going to talk to us about a proposed rezone at 4400 South Harrison Boulevard. Welcome back.
Okay, so this is a request to rezone a portion of the property that's at the entryway to the D Event Center. The property is currently zoned R3. The proposal is to rezone it to C2 to allow for a hotel to be built. And this would then become adjacent to Weber State as the property would transition from the institution to private development. The proposal is to look at a 100-room hotel being built on this property. This gives you a video of, not a video, but an air view of the property we're talking about. Presently, it serves as I said, entrance to the event center, has some storm drainage capacity in it, has some tree area, and that area in yellow would then become the hotel site. The 2.9 acres presently are divided in 5 parcels. There is one property that is owned by the Bureau of Reclamation for the canal that is buried underneath there. That's still retained in the federal government's ownership, but the properties on either side of that will be then be sold for the private development. The Bureau allows certain things to go over the canal, such as parking, but they do have restrictions, of course, for building or for landscaping in general in terms of trees. So there will be some things they've got to work around with that, but they feel that the site will adequately fit a hotel into it, which benefits not only the university, but the hospital. And both are looking forward to that opportunity to have a hotel in that vicinity. The reason the property was sold is put it out for a RFP is because the state would not allow the Weber State to build a hotel under their present situations. So it had to go into private development in order to have that amenity built close to campus. And it's not unfamiliar for hotels to be near university campuses. As I mentioned, the components of the property are the entryway, which will also become the future BRT route that shuttles between the D Event Center and the McKay-D. There's the stormwater system that exists and the canal. As the Planning Commission looked at that, they looked at the general plan policies, and the idea of commercial along Harrison is not inconsistent. In fact, across the street is commercially zoned properties. To the south is commercially zoned properties. So this is consistent with reflecting the character of the area. It also will require some revisions to the land in order that the area below the access road will all be in one ownership, and it'll be 2 parcels because it's being divided by the canal. It's also, the commission looked at the upcoming Southeast Ogden Community Plan and also reviewed as consistent with that, as well as present policies. And the plan talks about the idea of TOD zoning, which this hotel would fit into that, being along that BRT route. And the other thing is, we looked at the campus master plan, because one of the things that was asked is in one of the dissenting votes was that this area should be used for student housing. Again, in the Weber State master plan, the student housing is going to be placed more where the practice fields are now, and those practice fields shifted over to 4600. The other dissenting vote was concerned about the tree removals. The ordinance requires that tree preservation take place as much as possible. So when they do review the site plan, that'll be an item that will be looked at of what trees can be preserved in order to try to blend this into the natural environment that exists on the site at the present time. So the recommendation, it was a 7-2 vote to rezone it from R3 to C2.
Thank you, Greg. Any questions for Greg?
I do have one.
Oh, and I also should say that we could ask the person, Jeremy, right, if he wanted to speak. But go ahead, Councilmember Heyer.
Greg, I think it's just a good practice if we ask the question: is there any approved use in a C2 that would not be good at this location?
Well, I think the thing with this one is that the sale of property is tied with Weber State, sale contingent upon a certain thing happening. So while oftentimes we look at a conditional overlay and may ask that question that you've asked, because there may be some things that it's general retail sales. So there's nothing that's really obnoxious that would take place in the C2 zone. But I think Weber State, in their control of why they're selling the property and the limits they put on the property use, already addresses that.
Okay, that's fair enough. Thank you.
We'd like to hear from the petitioner.
So this is Jeremy Draper with Reeve and Associates for the petitioner, developer on this project. They're definitely excited about the project and looking forward to get this project built for a hotel and also a little restaurant on the parcel as well. That'd be a great use, complementary to Weber State and also to the area. So if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions?
I have one, Chair. Can you tell us a little bit about the company that's building this? Have they done any projects in the area or in the state? And financially, are they capable of taking on this project? I noticed we've had several projects that we've approved, and then the developer financially is unable to carry through with what he wanted to do. So,
I guess, I appreciate your question, Councilmember Stevens. I just wanted to clarify, and I hope that Rich will be a little proud of me. This is about a zoning change, right? Not about a particular development agreement.
Yeah,
So
I
just context.
understand that we're doing that, but I think we ought to at least have a little bit of background on the company there. So.
Yeah, so the development company that's doing this, they've partnered with a national brand hotel that'll be coming to the site. They're also working on several other projects throughout the state from down south in Moab all the way up through here into the north as well. So I think financially, yes, they're able to proceed with this, and they do look forward to breaking ground later this fall.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions? Well, thanks so much for coming, Jeremy. And then we're able to take public input on this item if anybody would like to make any comment. Brandon, do you mind repeating that process?
Not at all. So for those of us joining us via Zoom, you can provide input to the council on this item by raising your hand. And you can do that by pressing the raise hand button found at the bottom of your screen, whether you're on mobile or desktop. And if you're joining us via telephone, you can press *9 and that will also raise your hand.
I'm not seeing any activity on the chat indicating anybody would like to comment. So this is not a public hearing, right? So we just close the public input.
You don't need to close that.
Yeah, thank you. So I'd be happy to consider any motions.
Chair, I would make a motion that we adopt ordinance 2020-29.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Councilmember Stevens to adopt proposed ordinance 2020-29. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Heyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair?
Aye.
Chair Chaburka?
Aye, and that passes. Thank you. Thank you, Greg and Jeremy.
Chair, I'll make a comment. I think this is going to be a great benefit for Weber State. It's on a DOT line that is being proposed for that area, and I can just see a lot of pluses. The other plus would be, since it's tied to the university and to the hospital, I would hope that they would look at putting charging stations at this hotel that would accommodate those who are staying there, those who are using the hotel. They do it all throughout the country, and this would be a great opportunity for them to implement charging stations at this facility.
Second.
Thanks, Marcia.
Aye.
A lot of agreement there. I think it definitely fits into the mission of Weber State to be very eco-friendly and lower their carbon footprint, right?
All right.
Thank you. So now we have reports from administration. We welcome Brandy Johnson and Laura Lewis to talk with us about the fleet lease with Zions Bank. Welcome.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, we may want to, oh, perfect. Looks good.
All right. So before you tonight is a resolution to authorize the city to enter into a capital lease with Zions Bank to fund the purchase of heavy equipment for parks, streets, water, and refuse. The past 4 years, the city has leased this equipment from Wheeler Machinery under an operating lease or rental agreement where the equipment is returned to Wheeler at the end of that agreement. As we evaluated this, we involved Laura Lewis, our financial advisor with LYRB, to help review the cost and benefit of the operating lease versus a capital lease. And we decided to issue a request for interest rate proposal to fund the purchase of this equipment. The equipment we propose purchasing is listed here. So we have 2 backhoe loaders that would be used in the cemetery, sprinkler, water lines, loading and unloading materials, playground equipment, and moving and loading large tree trunks and branches. And then we have a wheel loader for refuse, which is to load and transport materials at the green waste site. And then streets, we have a small wheel loader for loading and moving construction materials for roads and the storm sewer line repairs. And then we have 3 backhoe loaders used in water for the leak crews, maintenance crews, really servicing all of our water main lines and service lines. So the total cost of the equipment is the $983,400. And just, I know there was a question asked, does the city have any other capital lease agreements? And we do have one already that is with Zions Bank. It was a capital lease agreement we did to fund the ERP, the purchase of the ERP. And this lease has approximately $270,000 outstanding, and it will be paid off in August of 2021. So now I'm going to turn the time over to Laura to kind of go through the financing of this capital lease agreement.
Thank you. Hope you're all doing well. It's good to see you, even if it's not in person. It is nice to actually see people as opposed to my 4 walls. I appreciate the opportunity of being involved with you tonight, and we'll go through this fairly quickly. We spend a fair amount of time at it at your work session. So just by way of reminder, and for the public that may be listening, and for your records, we went out and, well, I should back up. We started by conducting an analysis as to whether or not it made more economic sense to continue with your operating leases, where, as Brandy explained, you don't ever own them. You just continually, make lease payments and they swap it out. And 5 years later, you're making lease payments and they swap it out. We looked at that compared to a purchase option through Wheeler and what it would look like as a purchase option doing it yourself. Those, 2 different things that we tried to do our best to compare apples to apples, because on some of those options, maintenance is included and in some it's not. So we made sure to include it in all the options and do that quantitative analysis. It turns out that compared to just continually doing an operating lease, compared to the financing that you're able to enter into, that the savings over the 6 years is about $400,000. It's very, very meaningful savings. Once that decision was made, we ran the analysis assuming that the interest cost on your lease would be about 2.5%. We ended up significantly lower than that, thankfully for the markets and our inclination to be conservative when we're conducting our analysis. We put a term sheet out to the market. We had 4 bank respondents. We asked for both a 6-year option and an 8-year option, and went with the 6-year option. Zions Bank offered the most competitive rate and terms for that was proposed, and we have selected them. The documents have been vetted through your legal counsel, and they are ready for execution tomorrow. If you make the motion and it passes to adopt this resolution to enter into this agreement, and we will close the following day, and the funds will be available as soon as the equipment is available. What you have in front of you here on the screen is the sources and uses, the lease proceeds, as Brandy indicated. The financing fees we issued in $5,000 increments, and so there's some rounding amount. And then you see on the left-hand side of your screen the principal and interest repayment schedule. It won't be lost on any of you that the first year's payment is lower than the other years. That was by design, because one of the used pieces of equipment, and Brandy or someone else on the phone will have to remind me which piece of equipment it was. One of the pieces of equipment that's used, it made economic sense to just buy that outright as a used piece of equipment, not a new piece of equipment. And the cost of that acquisition, when you layered it on top of this debt service, would mean that your budget for these amounts is the same every year. But that's why the payment on the debt is lower in year one. The interest rate we landed on is 2.06. And with that, I'll take any questions that you might have.
Well, Laura, the piece of equipment is the motor grader.
Thank you. The one that you're buying.
Yes.
You're buying, yeah.
Yes.
Any questions?
I have a question for Brandy, and I'm sorry if I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties. I don't know if I missed this. Did you talk about if these passes, when will these equipment be purchased? And what will be?
I'm sorry, Luis. It's really hard to hear you. I don't know if you could try to get a little closer.
Okay, hold on. Let me try something else. Hold on. Can you hear me better?
Much better.
Okay. Did you talk about, Brandy, about when would this equipment be purchased and the procurement process?
Yeah, so Wheeler Equipment is on state contract, and some of the pieces of equipment would be available over the next couple months. So as those pieces, we were able to acquire or they would have in stock, then we would do that, but it would take us a couple months to get those all purchased.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I would like to thank Laura Lewis. Seems like whenever she comes, we're saving money. So she's great to have in meetings.
Yeah, agreed. Well, great. I'd be happy to.
Could you come next week?
Yeah.
Yeah, can I be happy to entertain any motions anybody would like to put forth?
And make sure I bring my magic wand.
That's right.
Chair, I'd make the motion that we adopt resolution 2020-19.
Second.
So a motion by Councilmember Heyer, a second by Vice Chair Blair to adopt proposed resolution 2020-19. This is also a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens? Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer?
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair?
Aye.
Chair Chaburka?
Aye. And that passes. Thank you again, Brandy and Laura.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your evening.
You too. So now we're in the time in our agenda where we're going to have general public comments.
Chair?
Chair, please.
Chair, before we go on, I have before we get to that, I have a question for you. It seems as though I've been doing some investigating and on my own as far as the historic nature of the tower out at the Ogden Hinckley Airport, and I'm wondering if we could maybe make a motion to reconsider at least looking at the ordinance that we passed a week ago, or it was only a week ago, maybe it was 2 weeks ago.
It was 2 weeks ago, but our last meeting.
Yeah, whenever that was. I just, I've been doing some questioning and looking at it and went out and drove by it. And I'm just wondering if we could reconsider it to get some more information from the planning department and understanding more about what the historic nature of that tower is. So I would like to move that we reconsider that, I guess, that ordinance that we passed.
And I'll second.
That was fast.
Sure. So we have a motion and by Councilmember White and a second by Councilmember Heyer. And I'm not looking at the language right now. I apologize. To reconsider the historic designation of the Ogden Airport Tower. Is that good enough, or do I need more specific language? I'm going to ask Glenn.
Sure. So the language would be to reconsider the adoption of the ordinance. So it would be ordinance 2020-26, which is specific to airport general plan amendments, which was adopted on the 23rd of June. So you would be making a motion to reconsider the approval or the adoption of that ordinance.
Is that what you're doing, Councilmember White?
Yes, that would be it.
Okay. Great. So we have a motion by Councilmember White and a second by Councilmember Heyer to reconsider the adoption of ordinance 2020-26 in the airport general plan amendments adopted on June 23rd. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Nadolski?
Having not voted on that item, I'm an aye on this reconsideration. Thank you for the opportunity.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair?
Aye.
Chair Shaburka?
Aye, and that passes. Thank you everybody for all of your work on that. And I don't know if anybody would like to make any comments about it.
Chair, I see that our airport manager is on the call still. Wondered if he had any comments about that. He's most directly affected by this, I think.
Please, Brian.